Anwar Sadat was an Egyptian politician and the third president of Egypt, serving from 1970 until his assassination in 1981. He was born on December 25, 1918, in Mitabu al-Qam, a village located in the Nile Delta region of Egypt. Sadat was the son of a lower middle-class family and received a traditional Muslim education before attending the Royal Military Academy in Cairo. After graduation, he served in the Egyptian army during World War II and later played a role in the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. In 1952, Sadat was one of the officers who helped overthrow King Farouk and establish a republic in Egypt. He quickly rose through the ranks of the military and became a close ally of President Jamal Abdel Nasser. In 1964, he was appointed as Vice President of Egypt. When Nasser died in 1970, Sadat succeeded him as President of Egypt. He immediately began to implement major reforms, including economic liberalization and a policy of infitah, or openness, which sought to attract foreign investment and modernize Egypt's economy. However, Sadat is perhaps best known for his role in the 1973 Yom Kippur War against Israel. After years of tension and occasional border clashes, Egypt launched a surprise attack on Israel on October 6, 1973, the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur. The war initially went well for Egypt, but Israel eventually turned the tide and emerged victorious. Nevertheless, Sadat's decision to go to war is widely seen as a turning point in the Arab-Israeli conflict. In 1977, Sadat made a historic trip to Israel, becoming the first Arab leader to visit the country. The visit led to the signing of the Camp David Accords in 1978, which paved the way for a peace treaty between Egypt and Israel in 1979. However, Sadat's willingness to make peace with Israel was deeply unpopular among many Egyptians, and he faced growing opposition from Islamist groups. On October 6, 1981, the 8th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, Sadat was assassinated by Islamist extremists during a military parade in Cairo. His death shocked the world and led to a period of political instability in Egypt. Despite his controversial legacy, Sadat is widely remembered as a key figure in modern Egyptian history and a significant player in the Arab-Israeli conflict. There is no evidence to suggest that Anwar Sadat intentionally deceived the world in preparing for the October War. In fact, the war was largely seen as a surprise attack by Egypt on Israel, with many countries caught off guard by the sudden outbreak of hostilities. However, it is true that Sadat and the Egyptian military took steps to conceal their preparations for war from Israel in the months leading up to the conflict. This was done in order to give Egypt a strategic advantage over Israel, which was seen as having superior military capabilities. To this end, Sadat and his military advisors engaged in a number of deceptive practices. For example, they made a show of dismantling their missile batteries along the Suez Canal, giving the impression that they were seeking to reduce tensions with Israel. In reality, the missile batteries were being moved to new locations and were being upgraded with new technology. In addition, Sadat ordered Egyptian troops to conduct regular exercises and movements along the canal, which he hoped would convince Israel that Egypt was not preparing for an attack. Meanwhile, the Egyptian military was secretly stockpiling weapons and ammunition in preparation for the conflict. Despite these efforts, Israel was still able to detect some of the Egyptian military buildup and had some advance warning of the impending attack. However, the element of surprise was still a key factor in Egypt's initial successes in the conflict. Overall, while Sadat and the Egyptian military did engage in some deceptive practices in the lead-up to the October War, it is inaccurate to suggest that they intentionally deceived the world in preparation for the conflict. Sadat and the October 1983 War. It's worth noting that Sadat's decision to go to war with Israel was not made in secret, and he had been warning about the possibility of conflict for some time. In the months leading up to the war, he gave a number of speeches in which he hinted at the possibility of an attack on Israel. However, what was kept secret was the extent of Egypt's military preparations for the conflict. This was done in order to maximize the element of surprise and gain a strategic advantage over Israel. Another factor that may have contributed to the perception of Sadat as deceptive was the fact that he was willing to make peace with Israel just a few years later. The Camp David Accords and the subsequent peace treaty between Egypt and Israel were seen by some as a betrayal of the Arab cause, and Sadat was widely criticized by many in the Arab world for his willingness to negotiate with Israel. Despite this criticism, Sadat defended his decision to make peace with Israel, arguing that it was necessary for the good of the Egyptian people and the broader region. He believed that a lasting peace with Israel was the best way to achieve stability and economic development in Egypt and the wider Arab world. In the end, it is difficult to say whether Sadat was intentionally deceptive in his preparations for the October War. What is clear, however, is that the conflict was a turning point in the Arab-Israeli conflict and had far-reaching consequences for the region. The genius of President Sadat. Anwar Sadat was a complex and multifaceted leader who demonstrated several qualities of genius throughout his life and career. Here are some of the ways in which he exhibited genius. Political acumen. Sadat had an acute political mind and was able to navigate the complex political landscape of Egypt and the Middle East with skill and finesse. He rose to prominence as a trusted lieutenant of Jamal Abdel Nasser and played a key role in the 1952 revolution that overthrew the monarchy. Later, as president, he implemented a series of economic and political reforms that helped modernize Egypt. Strategic thinking. Sadat was a strategic thinker who was not afraid to take risks. His decision to launch the surprise attack on Israel in the 1973 Yom Kippur was a bold and audacious move that caught Israel off guard and demonstrated Egypt's military prowess. Similarly, his decision to make peace with Israel a few years later was a courageous move that required him to go against the prevailing sentiment in the Arab world. Diplomacy. Sadat was a skilled diplomat who was able to build bridges with countries that were previously hostile to Egypt. His decision to visit Israel in 1977 was a groundbreaking move that paved the way for the Camp David Accords and the subsequent peace treaty between Egypt and Israel. He also cultivated strong relationships with other world leaders, including the United States and the Soviet Union. Vision. Sadat had a vision for Egypt and the Arab world that was both ambitious and pragmatic. He saw Egypt as a modern, prosperous, and influential country that could play a leading role in the region. His policies of economic liberalization and emphasized openness were aimed at creating a more dynamic and diversified economy that could compete on the global stage. Overall, Sadat's genius lay in his ability to navigate a complex political and strategic landscape, make bold decisions, and build relationships with other leaders. His legacy as a transformative figure in Egyptian and Middle Eastern history is a testament to his vision and leadership. Sadat's assassination. Anwar Sadat was assassinated on October 6, 1981, during a military parade in Cairo, Egypt. The assassination was carried out by a group of Islamic extremists who opposed Sadat's policies, including his peace treaty with Israel and his efforts to modernize Egypt. The assassins were members of the Egyptian Islamic Jihad, a radical Islamist group that was part of a broader militant movement in Egypt at the time. They had been planning the attack for months and had managed to infiltrate the military parade by posing as soldiers. During the parade, the assassins threw grenades and opened fire on the reviewing stand where Sadat and other senior officials were seated. Sadat was hit by multiple bullets and died shortly afterwards. Several other officials were also killed or wounded in the attack. The assassination of Sadat shocked Egypt and the world, and it had far-reaching consequences for the country and the broader region. The Egyptian government responded by cracking down. Conclusion. Anwar Sadat was a complex and multifaceted figure who played a significant role in Egyptian and Middle Eastern history. His legacy is one of bold decisions, strategic thinking, and visionary leadership. His decision to make peace with Israel and his efforts to modernize Egypt helped transform the country and the wider region, but they also made him a target of extremists who opposed his policies. Sadat's assassination was a tragic event that cut short a life of remarkable achievements and potential, and it had far-reaching consequences for Egypt and the Middle East. It remains a reminder of the dangers of extremism and political violence, and of the need for leaders who are willing to take bold steps to achieve peace and prosperity for their people. Today, Sadat's legacy continues to inspire and influence leaders in Egypt and beyond.